Hey guys, this is my genius. So today we're going to be talking about soil health and pretty much how your soil health affects your plant, but also how the health of your plant affects the nutrient density of your foods. So let's get into it. Okay, so we first start off with soil grows your plants, not fertilizers, right? So when we're talking about growing our plants, we want to put an emphasis on developing the health of the soil, right? Because if you guys know, it's the microorganisms and their relationship to the plants that actually help the plants grow more efficiently and more effectively. But we, as a society, have gone more into the commercial or chemical um, industry, and we've used fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, which not only have harmed our plants and our environment, but also it's decreased the nutrients in the foods that we eat, right? So it's always better to go organic because organic builds up the soil, and then with the built soil, that soil develops your plants. So again, soil health is equal to healthier food. So the healthier the soil is, the healthier your food is. So let's look at the chemical path, right? So if you go down the chemical path, what you do when you put chemical fertilizers in your soil is you create a toxic environment or soil conditions that kills microbes, right? And again, when we're talking about the microbes are what help expand the range and the nutrient capacity of the plants, right? Because we have mycorrhizal fungi that help extend the plant's reach of gathering nutrients and water, but then we also have the beneficial bacteria that help break down the nutrients for the plants to absorb so they don't have to take energy away by breaking that energy down themselves. So they pretty much reduce the time they make the nutrient form available for plants instead of plants having to do it themselves because that takes energy. So it lets the plant reserve its energy, right? So when we have them in the chemical environment, we put our plants in survival mode, right? So like just like us, you know how like when you're in survival mode, you're stressed, you're stretched out, and you're searching for something for help, right? Same thing with the plants. So when we hit them with like chemical fertilizers, just like they get hit with a drug, right? And they get a hit of nutrients, but it doesn't last forever. So they keep going out in search of it, and they keep going out and they keep extending their roots, and they're spending more energy on trying to find nutrients instead of being able to like stay in place and be able to acquire nutrients from microorganisms. So like again, they're in search for food, and then yeah. But then when we go to organic situation, this heals and supplements the soil, and it helps develop the microorganisms in the community in the soil, which helps develop the plant. And you can see the differences in the root because on this roots, the roots are more stocky and they're more close to the top of the soil level, which is because these plants, since the microorganisms are transferring the nutrients in the soil to a plant available form, now the plants don't have to extend their roots like in this one to go get nutrients, and also the mycorrhizal fungi are helping them to get the water. So again, they don't have to keep going out larger. They can just stay in one place and put more energy into accumulating nutrients in the roots, and then also using that to develop more foliage and then better flowers, better plants, so you can get healthier food, right? Because it has more nutrients. Because the food density is based on how much nutrients is in the roots, pretty much, and a little more than that. But basically it lies in how much the plant has stored up energy. So then we're going to like the type of food that it produces. So when we're looking at chemical situation, it produces D tier food, right? And we're looking at a tier, we're looking at the nutrient density. So this is 1 out of 10 nutrient density. So let's say the highest tier, which is S tier, would have 10 out of 10, and let's say that 10 out of 10 is like 100,000. Let's say it's like a rough number. So like out of 100,000, you're getting 1/10 of that. Like that's crazy, right? But that's what we get when we eat chemical food, right? D tier food, and then it's small and it's not nutrient sufficient because the roots are in survival mode, so they couldn't store up the nutrients like in this one, and thus it's small, right? And then we have organic. So organic produces higher tier food because when you grow, it produces higher tier food because of the soil health, but also the tier of the food is based off of consistency, containment, and communication. So what I like to call the three C's. So in the well-known growing environments, those three factors will affect the tier of your food pretty much. And again, like in this diagram, the size equals the nutrient density. So let's start off with farming, right? So farming would produce C tier food because again, we're looking at consistency, containment, and communication, and how this is able to produce this type of food. So what consistency is like, is this environment able to get consistent water, consistent food, consistent light, consistent air, all the things that a plant needs to live and grow, right? And when we look at a farm, farms can provide that, but also like farms are wide spaces. So again, we're looking at containment, which is another C. Containment is how this system is able to contain the materials that we're putting into it. So it's containing the water, it's containing the nutrients, and it's helping the air be is it helping the air flow in and out of the environment, right? So when we look at farming is a wide space because also you want feedback too. So farming is a wide space, and when there's so much water, I mean when the area is widespread, it's harder for like all that space for like it to focus on one plant and develop it. So then the food ends up being a little less nutrient dense because that space has all the materials spread out. And then communication is a combination of consistency and containment because communication is is a development of microorganisms. So based on the consistency of the system and the containment of the system, that determines the communication. So the communication ultimately also determines the tier of food, right? Because again, our microorganisms is the reason why our plants can develop faster and have more nutrient dense roots because they do all the work for them pretty much. So again, farming creates C tier food because it's very spread out. It has consistency, but it's spread out. So its communication creates C tier food because again, microorganisms grow in a space. So when it's spread out, they have to like go and expand to fill up that whole space. So every plant will be efficiently like catered to pretty much until for like a couple of years pretty much if that soil continues to be developed. And then we have raised beds. So again, going back to feedback, like raised beds, they have higher consistency, higher containment because it's a smaller space. So because it's a smaller space, it's able to give more attention to the plants inside the container, and then also that consistency it's easier to do because you're like only catering to one space pretty much when you have raised beds or just a small area contained to like a big scale farm, right? So then because of that consistency and containment, you have better improved communication because again, the microorganisms can take up that space more efficiently. Therefore, they create better food. And then you get B tier food, right? And then we have hydroponics. So hydroponics is a growing system where plants are grown in like water, and then there's like a nutrient solution that runs through the roots. So this creates A tier food because even though there's not containment in the sense of a pot, and that's why it also only comes to A tier, because again, with communication, with soil, you have to have soil to like really develop microorganisms. But because the consistency, because with hydroponic system, you have to consistency make sure the nutrient levels are right, the pH levels are right, but also it has the highest containment out of like farming, raised beds, and hydroponics because it's enclosed. So most of the things are never really leaving the environment. So the plant gets most of the nutrients from the system and never really leaves. So it creates better food, A tier food. But again, it can't go to the S tier yet because it lacks kind of communication because of the sense that it's not grown in soil, it's grown in water. Only soil can develop the microorganisms and communities like the other environments, right? And then we have torpedo-pots. Now, torpedo-pot hits all three the most out of all the growing methods that I've used because it's it's consistent with the fact that it has hydroponic-like features in there, which is pipings and tubing that water and keep the growing environment consistent. And then with the containment, it's in a pot that actually caters to the plant. So again, like because we're talking about feedback, like there's a smaller space, therefore the microorganisms can grow and colonize that space more efficiently. Therefore, the plant gets catered more efficiently by the microorganisms. And then we're talking about communication because both consistency and containment is high. It has the highest communication, and therefore we get way bigger slash nutrient dense food, right? And then again, like with the food that we eat, like your food feeds your gut, and your gut is like the central figure of your health. Like your gut health dictates pretty much the environment of your body. And if your gut health's in terrible shape, your health is in terrible shape. But if it's in good shape, because the food you eat, your body's in shape. So this is kind of like how the tiers of the foods affect your body in a sense. So when you eat the D tier food, you don't get any nutrients really because they kind of just end up getting used because like the same nutrients that you're intaking from there are getting used from some other area, so you don't really get to store them or use them, right? Because again, like the gut is similar to the soil. So when you develop the soil health, you develop the health of the plant. Same like things like us, like we're plants and our gut is like the soil, if that makes sense. So when we develop our gut health, we develop our health, right? But you can only develop your gut health with like nutrient dense food, right? So that creates a frail body, right? And then C tier food, there's still a good amount of nutrients in it, but it's not a lot compared to all the other. So your body's okay, like you have a sufficient amount of nutrients, but it could be better. And then B tier, now it's gonna improve, right? That's a good like probably like 7 out of 10. Like it's getting better, it's more efficient, like there's more food. And then your body's feeling a little fuller, you have a little more extra minerals, and you have A tier. Now you have a bunch of minerals, like you're doing really good, like the nutrients are looking good, your body's feeling good and nice, you got a good amount of food. Then you got S tier, coming from the pita like your body it gets the maximum amount of like nutrient density if we're talking about that 1,000 scale, because it has the highest amount of consistency, highest amount of containment. So there's the highest amount of communication, and therefore you have the most nutrient dense plants that you can get. Therefore, your body's in optimum state because it's getting optimum food, right? So optimum food creates good gut health, and then good gut health creates optimum health for yourself, right? So again, like your food, like what you are is what you eat. So if you eat like, low mineral density food, your body's, kind of weak and frail because remember, minerals are what helps your body, like it's like, it helps your body defend against its things. Like it's literally like defense. Like this is, this is literally like minerals are what helps your body like fight against like pathogens and things like that, right? But also what minerals do, or they help to moderate like burning food. Because like when you burn food, what happens is like the minerals in your body, they act as kind of like a furnace. So if you can think of like food as fuel, but the minerals that inside the fuel act as like the furnace or like the stone. So when you eat food that's mineral dense, it's like like a fire, which is like that energy burning for you to like move, being burned inside of a furnace, so it's contained. But then when you eat foods that are not mineral dense, you start to create like oxidative inflammation because it's like you have a fire, but you have no furnace, right? Like you have no covering, that's nothing to cover the fire. So that's how we kind of get inflammation inside our body sometimes. So again, it's kind of just good to like know how you're growing your food because again, remember you want the 3 C's: consistency, containment, and communication, because that's all affects how your food is grown in the sense of nutrient density. And again, the better tier the food, the better your health, and the better your gut health, so the better you can function, right? And again, it's always better to go organic than to go chemical because again, chemical is like the plant has to depend on like a drug, right? But what organic, the plant depends on like actual structure. It's built on structure. It has a sound system that it can depend on so that it can actually focus on doing things to grow more efficiently and grow stronger. So again, it feeds us better, right? So this is kind of the whole overview. So again, it's better to go organic than to go chemical. So just, this is kind of a little diagram so y'all can kind of see like the differences and why people say to go organic because, you can't see this stuff. And if you're not educated, you won't know. So because a lot of people, they start growing, but they're not aware of like, how chemical fertilizers affect their soil. So, that's kind of where they go to. But, this is whole diagram. But again, I thank you guys for watching. And again, it's really important to be able to understand how to grow your plants correctly so you can help to grow yourself, right? Because we're pretty much a plant ourselves. So when you develop the soil and the gut health in yourself, you develop better health. So when we develop the soil health and the soil, we develop the microorganisms, and the microorganisms take care of the plant, just like our gut takes care of us. So guys, again, I thank you guys for watching. And remember, I may be a plant genius, but she can be a plant genius too. Peace out, and thank you guys for watching.